Imagine the relentless downpour of a Texas storm, where the night sky unleashes its fury on the forgotten streets of Dallas. In the midst of this chaos stands Maya, a 16-year-old black girl with nothing but the tattered remnants of hope clinging to her soaked frame. Her eyes, wide with desperation, reflect the harsh glow of distant streetlights as she whispers to herself, begging the universe for mercy. But mercy is a luxury in a world that turns its back on the vulnerable. Maya, orphaned by a system that devours the weak, has been cast out into the cold by a cruel stepmother, left to scavenge scraps from overflowing dumpsters just to survive another day. Her skin, marked by the scars of poverty and prejudice, tells a story of endless rejection. Bullied in run-down schools, ignored by passers-by who see her as nothing more than a shadow. Yet tonight, driven by a raw, unyielding will to endure, she approaches the gleaming gates of a sprawling mansion, home to Ethan Blackwood, the ruthless CEO whose oil empire towers over the state like a monument to greed. Trembling, she knocks, her voice barely audible over the thunder. "Please, sir, just let me sleep in your dog's house. I can't take this rain anymore." The door creaks open, revealing Ethan's silhouette against the warm, opulent light inside. His face, etched with calculation, hovers in the shadows as he sizes her up. What happens next defies every expectation of kindness, plunging into a darkness that exposes the rotten core of power and privilege. As Maya's plea hangs in the air, the storm rages on and the true horror begins to unfold. If this story gripped you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales that uncover the shadows of our world. As the door swung open, the warm glow from inside the mansion spilled out like a cruel taunt, illuminating Maya's drenched figure kneeling in the mud. Ethan Blackwood stood there, his tall frame casting a long shadow over her, his eyes narrowing with a mix of curiosity and disdain. But to understand the weight of this moment, we must delve into the fractured pasts that brought these two worlds crashing together. A tale of opulence built on exploitation and a life shattered by systemic cruelty, where every heartbeat echoes with injustice. Ethan's story began in the sun-baked oil fields of West Texas, where his father, a roughneck driller, taught him that success meant stepping on others to rise. From a young age, Ethan learned to navigate the cutthroat world of energy moguls, clawing his way up through sheer ambition and a willingness to bend rules. By his 30s, he had founded Blackwood Petroleum, a behemoth that drilled deep into the earth, extracting fortunes while leaving scarred landscapes and broken communities in its wake. His days were a whirlwind of boardroom battles and gleaming skyscrapers, where he sealed deals over crystal glasses of aged whiskey, his laughter booming as he outmaneuvered rivals. Evenings brought lavish dinners in exclusive clubs, surrounded by sycophants who praised his genius, their flattery feeding his ego like fuel to a fire. Ethan's mansion, perched on a hill overlooking Dallas, was a fortress of luxury. Marble floors, imported art, and a staff that catered to his every whim. Yet beneath the polished veneer lay a heart as cold as the steel pipelines he commanded. He viewed the poor not as fellow humans, but as obstacles, lazy burdens on society. In private calls with associates, his voice dripped with contempt. "Those beggars on the streets, they're just too weak to fight for what's theirs. I built this empire from nothing. Why can't they?" His racism was subtle, woven into casual remarks about urban problems, and those people who, in his mind, didn't belong in his America. Ethan's world was one of isolation, where empathy was a weakness he had long eradicated, replaced by a predatory instinct that saw vulnerability as an opportunity to dominate. In stark contrast, Maya's existence was a relentless storm of hardship, born into a cycle of poverty that gripped her like chains. Growing up in the shadowed alleys of South Dallas, she was the daughter of a single father, a hard-working mechanic named Jamal, who dreamed of better days for his little girl. But those dreams shattered one fateful night, when Jamal was pulled over for a broken taillight, his encounter with the police escalating into tragedy. The officers claimed self-defense, but whispers in the community spoke of racial profiling, of a black man gunned down for daring to question authority. Maya, only 10 at the time, watched from the window as her world crumbled. Her father's body slumped on the asphalt, sirens wailing like a dirge. The loss hollowed her out, leaving a void that no amount of tears could fill. Her mother had abandoned them years earlier, chasing illusions of a better life, so Maya was shuffled into the care of a resentful stepmother, a woman hardened by her own struggles, who saw the child as an unwelcome burden. Their home was a crumbling apartment in a forgotten neighborhood, walls thin enough to hear the neighbors' fights, the air thick with the stench of despair. Maya attended a rundown school where bullying was as routine as recess. Classmates hurled slurs like dirty black trash, their words carving wounds deeper than any physical blow. They call me Preta Suja, but all I want is a dry place to sleep, she confided once to a street friend named Lila, another lost soul scavenging for survival. Lila nodded, her own eyes weary. The world's built against us, Maya, but you gotta keep fighting. Maya did fight. Odd jobs after school, mopping floors in dingy diners for pennies, her small hands blistered from labor that no child should endure. Yet eviction came swiftly, her stepmother's final act of cruelty. Get out, you ain't my blood. Cast into the streets, Maya wandered like a ghost, sleeping under bridges, her body aching from the cold, her spirit fraying at the edges. Hunger gnawed at her constantly, forcing her to rummage through trash bins for half-eaten meals, the humiliation burning hotter than any fever. In quiet moments, she dreamed of escape, of a world where her skin color didn't mark her as lesser, where kindness wasn't a myth. But reality was a brutal teacher, reinforcing the divide between her and men like Ethan, worlds apart, yet on this rainy night, fate wove their paths into a tangled web. As Ethan peered down at Maya, his mind raced through calculations, seeing not a desperate girl, but a potential pawn in his game of power. The rain pounded relentlessly, each drop a reminder of the chasm between them. Maya lifted her head, her voice trembling but resolute. "Sir, I've got nowhere else, please." Ethan's lips curled into a faint smile, one that held no warmth, only the promise of something darker. He stepped aside, gesturing inward with a hand that bore a gold watch worth more than her entire life. "Come in," he said, his tone laced with feigned benevolence, "but don't expect pity from me." The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, sealing her fate in the opulent trap, as the storm outside mirrored the turmoil brewing within. As Maya stepped across the threshold, the heavy door slamming shut behind her like the final nail in a coffin, the opulent warmth of the mansion enveloped her chilled body. But it offered no comfort, only a deceptive embrace that masked the predator lurking within. Water dripped from her ragged clothes onto the polished marble floor, pooling in small, accusing puddles that reflected the crystal chandelier overhead, its lights twinkling like distant stars mocking her earthly plight. She trembled uncontrollably, her thin frame racked by shivers that went beyond the physical cold, delving into the bone-deep fear of what this stranger might demand. Ethan Blackwood circled her slowly, his expensive loafers silent on the floor, his gaze dissecting her like a specimen under glass. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that screamed wealth, his silver hair combed back with precision, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, held a glint of something feral, a hunger not for flesh but for control. "Stand up straight, girl," he commanded, his voice smooth as oil but laced with the sharpness of authority honed in boardrooms where fortunes were made and lives discarded. Maya pushed herself upright, her knees wobbling, her dark curls plastered to her face hiding the tears that mingled with rainwater. Thank you, sir," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, carrying the weight of 1,000 rejections. "I didn't mean to bother you, the rain, it's everywhere and I have no place. Your dog's house. It's out back, right? Bigger than anything I've known. Just one night, please. I won't make a sound." Ethan leaned against a grand oak table, crossing his arms, his posture exuding the casual dominance of a man who had never begged for anything in his life. He studied her, noting the way her hands clutched at her soaked hoodie, the faint bruises on her arms from nights spent fending off the street's dangers. A part of him, buried deep under layers of entitlement, might have flickered with pity, but it was quickly smothered by the thrill of power imbalance. "Why me?" he asked, his tone probing, almost amused. "There are shelters, charities, hell, even churches for folks like you. What makes you think knocking on a stranger's door in the dead of night is a smart move?" Maya's breath hitched, her mind racing through the litany of failures that had led her here. She thought of the overcrowded shelters that turned her away, citing no space for troublemakers, their eyes lingering too long on her skin color, implying she was the problem. "They don't want me," she replied, her voice gaining a fragile strength born of desperation. "They say I'm a racial issue, like my being black means I'm gonna steal or cause fights. But I ain't like that. I've been good, worked jobs, stayed out of trouble. My daddy taught me better before they took him." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken grief, the memory of her father's death flashing in her mind like lightning. The police lights, the gunshots, the blood pooling on the pavement. Ethan tilted his head, feigning interest, but inside, his thoughts twisted into darker territories. He saw opportunity in her vulnerability, a chance to assert his superiority, to play God in this microcosm of societal divides. The hall seemed to close in around them, the ticking of a grandfather clock echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. Maya shifted uncomfortably, the scent of polished wood and faint cigar smoke overwhelming her senses, a stark reminder of the worlds colliding. "Please, sir," she pressed, stepping forward tentatively, her eyes pleading. "I saw your house from the road. It's like a palace, and the dog's house. It's got walls, a roof. I promise I'll leave at dawn. I just can't take another night out there feeling like I'm drowning." Ethan's chuckle was low, rumbling from his chest like distant thunder, sending a chill down her spine colder than the storm outside. He moved closer, invading her space, his cologne a suffocating cloud. "Drowning, huh? Life's full of that. But tell me, what's in it for me? You think pity comes free in this world?" His words were a hook, baiting her further into his web, his mind already scheming ways to turn this encounter to his advantage. Maya recoiled slightly, but defiance sparked in her eyes, the same fire that had kept her alive on the streets. I can clean, cook. Whatever you need. Just mercy, that's all I'm asking." The tension thickened, the air electric with unspoken threats. Ethan reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder, not touching but close enough to make her flinch. In that moment, the power dynamic crystallized. He, the untouchable titan. She, the disposable pawn. But beneath his facade, a sadistic curiosity brewed. What would it take to break her spirit completely? The storm raged on outside, rain lashing the windows like accusations as Maya's heart pounded in her ears, wondering if this sanctuary was truly salvation or the entrance to a deeper hell. As their eyes locked in that charged silence, Ethan's smile widened, revealing teeth too perfect, too predatory. "All right, girl," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that promised nothing good. "You've got my attention, but everything has a price." The words trailed off, leaving the air thick with foreboding, the true nature of his intentions lurking just beyond the shadows of the hall. What would you do in Maya's shoes? Beg more or run while you still could? The air in the mansion hall grew heavier, as if the weight of Ethan's words had thickened the atmosphere, each syllable dripping with a menace that Maya felt in her bones. His voice, low and deliberate, echoed in her ears. Everything has a price, and the promise behind it sent a shiver racing through her, colder than the rain that still clung to her skin. She stood frozen, her soaked hoodie dripping onto the pristine marble, her eyes darting from Ethan's predatory smile to the towering walls of his fortress-like home. The opulence mocked her, the gold-framed paintings and gleaming fixtures a cruel reminder of a world that had always shut her out. Ethan gestured toward a hallway, his movements smooth, almost theatrical, as he led her through the mansion, past rooms filled with luxuries she could scarcely comprehend. A grand piano, a wine cellar glowing with amber light, a dining table set for a feast no one attended. "This way," he said, his tone deceptively gentle, like a shepherd guiding a lamb to slaughter. Maya's bare feet slapped against the cold floor, leaving wet prints that seemed to vanish as quickly as her hopes. She wanted to run, to bolt back into the storm, but her body ached, her stomach growled, and the memory of the relentless rain kept her moving forward. The doghouse, she told herself, was her salvation. Just one night out of the cold, one moment of respite from a life that had offered her none. They reached a glass door leading to the backyard, where the storm raged on, lightning flashing like a warning across the manicured lawn. Ethan pushed it open, the wind howling in, carrying the scent of wet earth and desperation. There it was, the doghouse, a miniature mansion of its own, complete with a peaked roof, air vents, and a soft glow emanating from within, as if it were mocking the hovels Maya had called home. It was absurdly luxurious, larger than the room she'd shared with her stepmother, with insulated walls and a padded floor for some pampered pet that probably ate better than she ever had. "There it is," Ethan said, his voice tinged with amusement as if presenting a grand prize. "Just like you wanted. A roof, walls dry as a bone." Maya's heart leaped, a flicker of relief cutting through her fear, but it was short-lived. She stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the small structure, imagining the warmth, the safety, even if it meant sleeping where a dog belonged. But as she moved closer, Ethan's hand shot out, gripping her arm. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to root her in place. "Not so fast," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear, sending a jolt of dread through her. She turned, meeting his gaze, and saw something darker than before, a glint of sadistic pleasure that made her stomach churn. He led her to the doghouse, opening its small door with a flourish, revealing a padded interior that smelled faintly of cedar and cleanliness. Maya hesitated, her instincts screaming to flee, but the rain pounded harder and exhaustion weighed her down like chains. "Go on," Ethan urged, his voice now a velvet blade. "You begged for it, didn't you?" Swallowing her fear, Maya crawled inside, the space tight but warm. The padded floor a stark contrast to the concrete she'd slept on for weeks. For a fleeting moment she felt a surge of gratitude, but it shattered when she heard the click of a lock. Her head snapped up, her hands scrambling to the door only to find it sealed tight. Panic clawed at her chest as she pounded against it, the sound muffled by the storm. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her voice cracking with terror. Through the small window she saw Ethan's silhouette, his smile now a grotesque caricature of kindness. "Relax, girl," he called out, his tone mocking. "You wanted shelter? You got it. But nothing's free. You'll earn your keep." Maya's heart thundered as she noticed tiny red lights blinking in the corners of the doghouse. Cameras, their lenses like unblinking eyes watching her every move. Her breath came in gasps, the realization hitting her like a blow. This wasn't mercy. It was a trap. Ethan's voice carried through the door, chillingly calm. "Tomorrow you start working for me, cleaning, running errands, whatever I say, for free, forever. Or I make one call to immigration, and you're gone. You think anyone's looking for a girl like you?" His words sliced through her, each one a reminder of her invisibility to the world, her disposability in the eyes of men like him. Maya's fists beat against the door, her cries drowned by the rain, but Ethan was already turning away, his laughter blending with the thunder. Inside the doghouse, the air grew stifling, the walls closing in as if to suffocate her dreams of escape. She sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face, her mind racing with memories of her father's warnings. "The world ain't kind to us, Maya, but you gotta be stronger than it." But how could she be strong when she was locked in a cage, disguised as charity, by a man whose generosity was a lie? The cameras blinked on, their red glow a constant reminder of her captivity. As Ethan's footsteps faded into the mansion, leaving her alone with the storm and the dawning horror of what earning her keep might mean. As the rain battered the doghouse, Maya curled into herself, her body trembling not from cold, but from the weight of betrayal. The promise of shelter had become a prison, and Ethan's true intentions loomed like a shadow she couldn't outrun. The night stretched on, each second a battle between despair and the faint, stubborn spark of defiance that refused to die. The rain had not stopped, its relentless drumming against the doghouse a cruel metronome to Maya's racing heart. Inside the locked enclosure, the air was thick with the scent of cedar and betrayal, the blinking red lights of the cameras mocking her every shudder. She pressed her palms against the sealed door, her breath fogging the small window as she stared into the storm, the world beyond blurred by water and despair. Hours had passed since Ethan's chilling ultimatum, his words, "You'll work for me for free, forever," etched into her mind like a brand. The doghouse, once a fleeting promise of shelter, had become a cage, its padded walls a grotesque parody of comfort. Maya's body ached, her clothes still damp, clinging to her skin like the weight of her past. Yet within her, something stirred, a fire kindled by years of surviving a world that saw her as less than human. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, steady and warm despite the violence that took him. "You're stronger than their hate, Maya. Don't ever let them break you." She wiped her tears, her trembling hands curling into fists. She would not break, not here, not now. In the dead of night, as the storm's fury softened to a mournful drizzle, Maya's desperation birthed a plan. The doghouse was sturdy, but it wasn't a vault. She traced the edges of the small window with her fingers, feeling for weaknesses, her nails scraping against the frame until they bled. The cameras watched, but she didn't care. Let Ethan see her fight. With a shard of broken wood she'd found in a corner, she pried at the window's latch, her movements frantic yet deliberate, fueled by a rage that burned hotter than her fear. The latch gave way with a soft snap, and the window swung open, letting in a gust of cold air that felt like freedom. Maya squeezed through the narrow opening, her thin frame scraping against the edges, tearing her hoodie but not her resolve. She landed in the muddy grass, the rain kissing her face like an apology from the sky. For a moment, she crouched there, heart pounding, expecting Ethan's shadow to loom over her. But the mansion was dark, its windows blank, as if the house itself were complicit in his cruelty. She ran, her bare feet slapped against the wet lawn, then the gravel path, each step a defiance of the chains Ethan had tried to forge. The streets of Dallas stretched before her, as unforgiving as ever, but they were hers again. Hers to navigate, hers to survive. Maya's breath came in ragged gasps, her body screaming for rest, but she pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that staying still meant surrender. She thought of her father, of the nights he'd held her close, whispering stories of ancestors who endured worse and still rose. She thought of the shelters that rejected her, the slurs that cut her, the hunger that gnawed at her soul. And she thought of Ethan, his smug smile, his cameras, his belief that he could own her. That belief was his mistake. Maya was no one's property, no one's pawn. She was a spark in the dark, a girl who had faced the abyss and refused to fall. Dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of gray and gold, but Maya didn't stop to admire it. She slipped into an alley, her figure swallowed by the shadows of crumbling buildings, her heart heavy with the truth of the world she'd escaped. Ethan would wake to find the doghouse empty, his cameras capturing nothing but her absence. He would rage, perhaps, or laugh it off, secure in his untouchable empire. Men like him always were. The system that let him thrive while she suffered would churn on, its wheels greased by indifference and power. Maya knew this, felt it in every scar, every memory of doors slammed in her face. Yet she also knew she'd taken something back, her agency, her fight, her refusal to be erased. The streets were no kinder than they'd been yesterday, but she was different now, hardened by the night's betrayal, her eyes burning with a quiet, unyielding fury. As she disappeared into the city's underbelly, Maya's story became a whisper in the wind, a tale of survival against a world that offered no mercy. Ethan's mansion stood as a monument to his cruelty, untouched by consequence, while Maya carried the weight of her freedom, fragile but fierce. The rain had stopped, but the echoes of injustice lingered, a reminder that for every Maya who escaped, countless others remained trapped in the shadows of men like him. What does this story stir in you? Anger, hope, or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's uncover the truths hidden in the dark. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that cut to the bone.